And I want to hear one more story because I love the story. There's a guy on Twitter who does shows named Marwa, I think it's Narfal. He knows dick about dick. He knows dick about dick. And yet spends all day posting stories, clips, stuff like that. Many of the stuff he gets wrong. And it's like, dude, how are you just effing this up like this? We already have a mainstream media. Why are you here? But he has a massive platform. Now, McGregor, looking at you, McGregor, I've tried to get you on my show. I would love to have you on my show. I would love to have a conversation with you if he ever gets this. Instead of coming on my show and having a good conversation with me, he goes on Marwal's show and wastes his time completely. It is a funny thing when a man is being interviewed and he openly says, "You are wasting my time." That is an amazing thing. That is just special. That is just special. That is very rarely do you get to see that. Well, you get to see it with Colonel McGregor when he's having this conversation and Marwal says very stupid things to him that he should know better, and yet he doesn't because mainstream media has told him so. This is Colonel McGregor effectively completely nailing Marwal. It's the funniest thing in the world to me, and well-deserved.
We're seeing advancements on the Russian side, especially in the recent weeks, but they've been relatively minimal. There's, one could say, a stalemate there. Both sides are losing a lot of men, a lot of equipment.
Nonsense, Mario. Stop wasting my time. Stop lying to your audience. That's bullshit. Okay, the Russian losses have dropped to single digits. Think about that. 60, 90 days ago.
That is rough. And then there's the nervous cough after that. I'm gonna play this out. I'll play this one more time. I just want to point out the nervous cough. He said I was lying to my audience, and I do a news show. He said I am wasting his time. Why am I here? Why am I here? Oh, that is great. That is great. Let's keep going. I want to watch, and I'll start from the beginning.
We're seeing advancements on the Russian side, especially in the recent weeks, but they've been relatively minimal. There's, one could say, a stalemate there. Both sides are losing a lot of men, a lot of equipment.
Nonsense, Mario. Stop wasting my time. Stop lying to your audience. That's bullshit. Okay, the Russian losses have dropped to single digits. Think about that. 60, 90 days ago, they were double digits. Ukrainian losses are continuously horrific. So this is the nonsense that people are repeating on their way into this discussion with the Russians up in Alaska. You have no chance of coming to any sort of reasonable outcome when you have distortions on the strategic level of the kind that you've just outlined. That's absolutely false, completely wrong. Now, you're free to believe it, but I'm not going to sit here and listen to that nonsense because it's just not true. Now, you want to know what's going to happen? If Donald Trump walks into this meeting with the distorted view that you have just outlined, nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens. And I don't think Donald Trump privately believes anything that you've just said. I think he knows the truth.
Oh, that is just great. That is just great. That is so satisfying. That is satisfying. And he's right. And he's completely right. If you are Donald Trump and your intelligence says 8,000 Ukrainians have died over the course of the year, but 120,000 Russians have died, then what do you think in your appraisal of the world and your appraisal of the war? In your mind, well, Russia is moving, they're making small gains, but God, man, they're losing hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of people a month in order to do it, which goes back to the Soviet trope of wave attacks. The Russians are doing wave attacks. They're doing wave attacks. Now, Media Zona doesn't even come up with this assessment. 150,000 maybe over the course of the entirety of the war by the Russians, as opposed to the Ukrainians that are losing more and more and more. Even the bodies that were being returned, where you would get like 5,000 Ukrainians or like, 20 Russians or something like that. The skew is getting worse. The only reason that you would give the screwed up skew, most likely coming out of Ukrainians, was Zelensky's like, we lost 8,000 people the entirety of the war, or 30,000 the entirety of the war. This is nonsense. You're trying to cover for your failures in this. You're trying to make it look as if it's not as bad as it actually seemed on the battlefield. So yeah, you should continue to give me money. You should continue to give me weapons because we could still win this thing. We could still fight this war. It is very difficult to get people to sink money into something that is a failure, especially when it's a war that comes across as a loss. And when you look at a number of 150,000 to 1.5 million, and you see that they can't plug their hose, that they're snatching pizza drivers, dog walkers, that they are press ganging rando men that are coming out of their houses, that they're adding elderly men, grandpas, into the military, and women, and 18-year-olds, what I would call kids. That's not indicative of you losing 8,000 people over the course of 6-8 months. When you look at Russia, where it has 2 additional militaries in waiting, when you have 400,000 men that deserted, that's not my number, that came out of the Rada. That is reality. You can't plug your hose. Russia is moving faster and faster and faster, even to the point where they're flanking your last defensive lines. And no, they're not losing 100,000 men over the course of a year, maybe the course of the entirety of the war. You're lying for the explicit point of making it seem like the Ukrainian military is doing better than what it is, that the Russian military is doing worse than what it is. And if you're going into the negotiation with those skewed up figures and that skewed up point of view in your mind, a point of view that the mainstream media has ran with for the entirety of the war, by the way, meaning when I was reporting reality, they were reporting nonsense. And as I kept saying early on, reality asserts itself, and here we are. It's asserting itself for the president that has probably the right numbers at this point. When they asked Donald Trump, hey, did you know they were press ganging the elderly into the military? Donald Trump said, nobody told me that. Hey, did you know that they were doing it? Nobody told me that either. When Donald Trump gave that speech before the Alaska thing, he was more informed. Hey, man, they're even pulling an elderly into the military. He knew. And I would wager to you that somebody briefed him and said, hey, this is worse than what we've been telling you it is, or it is worse than what you've been saying it is, or it is worse than what is being reported. To Douglas McGregor's, to the compliment of Douglas McGregor, he has been more right on this all the way through. Sometimes he says stuff that I wasn't sure where he got it from. But for all intents and purposes, he has been more right all the way through, far more than any notion of mainstream media, any notion of people like Marwal, who's been reporting this nonsense just coming out of Ukraine. It looks like he was typing up to try to figure out, hey, where did I get these numbers from? Zelensky said it. Oh, if Zelensky said it, it has to be right. Zelensky wouldn't lie, right? I'm trying to make a very basic point. And I've said this before. You tell the truth to end wars. You lie to keep them going. If Trump gets involved, when Joe Biden is talking about the war, and Joe Biden and Europe create this cacophony of lies, this full architecture of nonsense. Russia just wanted to take Ukraine. Russia wants to take all of Europe. Russia blew up its own pipeline. Russia is just looking at all of this land that they want to take. This is nonsense. William Burns' memo, net means net, point out, even back in 2008, if you keep pushing NATO in Ukraine, this is going to create a civil war, a war that's taking place on Russian border that they're not going to want to get involved in. Burns knew it all the way back then. And then, to make it even worse, there are no Nazis in Ukraine, even though the Democratic Party and all of these people full well knew oceans of articles about Nazis being in Ukraine. Victoria Nuland having the conversation with Pyatt, talking about F the EU and talking about the people they were going to stall in Ukraine after the coup. A coup, by the way, that they call the Revolution of Dignity. I'm saying, If you are trying to start and support a war, you lie. If you're trying to get to some level of some kind of agreement, a deal, a ceasefire, or something, some level of resolution, whatever that resolution is, you tell the truth. Going into Ukraine was always a red line. Pushing to the border of Russia was always a problem. All of these people are getting killed. All of these Ukrainians are getting killed. For God's sake, they're dragging in old men and haberdashers and Domino's pizza drivers. This is a disaster. Russia is continuously moving, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you're not going to be entirely truthful because you're a U.S. president, and you don't want to come away looking like you fundamentally lost. After all, this is a face-saving mechanism, right? But you need to be more honest than that nonsense. And you need to have a more honest appraisal when you go into the negotiation to figure out where are we actually in real life and where are they in real life. And that is going to give me some context to the deal to which I can make. What's a deal that will be in my best interest given the situation that's taking place on the battlefield in the context of what they want and what they say they want. When J.D. Vance came out that time and said, well, the Russians want too much. What do you mean the Russians want too much? What do you mean? You have fundamentally lost. You're busted. Well, they seem to have changed their tune when it seems like the Russians started to break through and the speed of their advance quickened. They changed their tune. Mawal is still here going with numbers like, well, the Russians lost 120,000 people just this year alone in 8 months, and the Ukrainians only lost 8,000. So, these are very brutal losses. McGregor's like, dude, you're wasting my time. I will leave. You're lying to your audience. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.